right, welcome everybody, and welcome to my new friend Darro here, who is a indie pop punk emo artist. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, can you give us like a rundown of what it is you do now, and then maybe even a little backstory how you got to where you are?
Whew, okay. So yeah. First off, Matt, thank you for having me on this show. This is awesome. Um, Primarily, the music that I make is I'm actually starting to transition into more of a different type of sound, slightly different. It's still very much within the pop punk and emo realm. I'm throwing a little bit of contemporary modern hip hop sounds. I've been heavily inspired by Polyphia lately, a lot of Nothing Nowhere as well. So I'm trying to blend like the really interesting guitar licks that Polyphia makes with like the really cool, hip hop grooves from Nothing Nowhere, and rooted very heavily in pop punk and emo. So that's kind of like what I'm transitioning into right now. Um, but to be honest, like sometimes I legitimately feel like a poser within the genre, because like when I grew up, I really grew up listening to a lot of hip hop and R&B music, because I grew up in the inner city, and there's like very very like urban setting. So like high school, it was just all R&B and pop and hip hop. But when I started playing guitar, which was like sometime in very early high school, was when I really started to like, get into bands, rock bands. And so my journey with my music has always been centered around the guitar. And so like, as I started to get better as a player and I started practicing more, I started really wanting to like figure out how to write my own music. But I was like super insecure, right? So I was like one of those kids that like I would practice for hours and hours and hours because I really wanted to be like the best guitar player there was. And then I never like wrote any music because I just wanted to be a good guitar player. And then when I went to music school, I very, very quickly realized that I was not anywhere near close to being the best guitar player like ever. Like you basically have to be like born out of the womb with a guitar essentially at this point. It's insane. So I started to like shift my focus a little more, because what I started to realize was that after all that practicing and studying music and stuff, I realized that I didn't have like my own sound or my own voice. And I got really self-conscious about it, because it started to feel like I was trying to cover up my insecurities of writing music just by practicing a lot. And eventually, like, it got to the point where I just kept telling myself, if I keep practicing music, I'll eventually start writing my own songs, which is not really how it works. You kind of just like have to sit down and like force yourself to write music to really get started. And I'm not one of the lucky ones where like I wasn't like a natural songwriter. I know a lot of like musicians and artists are just pump out like 2 or 3 songs a day, and I'm very much not one of those people. So it's a new thing, because I'm lately, for the last like year or so, I've been like forcing myself to write a lot more music. Um, and that's, I'm getting better. I think I'm starting to like, my output of songs is starting to increase. My output of good songs is starting to increase. So yeah. And so that's like how my story with music. But I didn't really write any or release any music until like, I want to say like 3 years ago was when I really started like releasing music seriously. And I don't know if you've like heard anything about like the brain tumor situation that I had. So, whew, you're in for a story. Do you want to hear about it?
I definitely want to hear, because do you know Dustin from Two Eyes Open? Is that or
Yes.
just
Yeah. Yeah. We
okay?
talk a lot. Yeah.
Cool. So he's a mutual friend of ours who recommended me your music, and as I listened with each new song, I was like more and more. I was like, okay, I got to talk to this guy to learn more. And then he told me, he's like, you have a really incredible, unique story. So that is part of what I'm here for. So take it away, sir.
Okay. So, all right. I don't even know where to begin. That's a lot to live up to, but I'll try to deliver. So I want to say that it all started probably when I was like around 18 years old. Around 18, I was starting to, it all started with headaches, right? Um, And that's not very uncommon at all. It's actually a very common thing is for headaches. But they were like really chronic. They were chronic and they were sharp headaches. And they just never went away. Like I went to doctors. Most of the time, they just prescribed me like some painkillers, and they're like, "You're young, you'll be fine." I was not fine. So like years went by. Like I was having these chronic issues for years and years. And sometime in like 2015, 2016, I started to experience changes in my body. Like things that you shouldn't experience after finishing puberty. I was like starting to grow again. Like I was getting taller for some reason. I mean, I wasn't a very tall dude to begin with, but I was, starting to get taller. I was experiencing a lot of joint pain, and my jaw started to like grow out as like with an underbite. So I started to develop an underbite like in 2016 and 2017. And it got to the point where, eventually where I was having trouble eating. Like there was a point in time where like my teeth weren't touching at all whenever I bit down. And my teeth were never like that. Like my entire life I've had a normal bite, like, you know what I mean? And so it's like, it's weird. And it's a weird thing to like, for your bones to grow at that age in your life, because, puberty's finished. Your body shouldn't be changing structurally that much. But I didn't know any of this at the time. And in 2016 was when I had like a major breakup with like a very long-term girlfriend at the time. And this was like 6 months before I graduated from Berkeley. So I was like, I had a plan, and that plan was to go live with this person after I graduated. And all of a sudden my life was open-ended. And so compounding like these weird health issues that I was experiencing with this unexpected shift of my life at a really like critical or pivotal point in my time in my life, I was just like, I was really, really like distraught. Right. And so I didn't know what to do. And all I had been doing this time was practicing music and going to school for music. And so I was just like, well, let me just go to more school for music while I figure this out. So then I decided to go to grad school. And so I went to study abroad in Spain, because Berkeley has like a master's program in Spain. And so I auditioned and I went to Berkeley to live in Spain. And it was like awesome. Like I was like, who wouldn't want to go live in Spain for like a year and a half? And so I did that, but the health issues weren't changing. And when I went, I was like, okay, so I've been practicing guitar for a very long time. And if I decide to do this graduate program, then I'm going to like make a name for myself. I'm going to start doing my own things, right? I'm going to start writing my own music. I'm going to like start to develop into an artist, which was my goal. And I showed up there and I immediately recessed into my like reclusive, just play guitar, like, and because I was like so self-conscious about being an artist. I was like, I'm not going to be good enough. I've just got to keep practicing until I'm good enough to be an artist. And it doesn't work like that. And then, so after the first semester my jaw was still growing. I was still experiencing all these issues. I was gaining so much weight. I couldn't sleep. I was super stressed. And then in December of 2016, I decided that I had had enough with this stupid jaw issue, right? I was like, I'm going to go get surgery. Like I'm going to get jaw surgery. And it was way cheaper in Spain, because for some reason in the United States, it's not considered it's considered a cosmetic surgery. So it's not ever covered under insurance. So American healthcare, no,
The
thank
worst.
you. The worst. So I decide, like, this was the dumbest decision I had ever made. I decided to go get jaw surgery in Spain. And it was expensive. My mom sold her car to finance my jaw surgery. So bless her heart, if I ever make it big, I'm going to buy her like 5 cars. She sold her car for me to afford jaw surgery. I skipped the last week of finals to get the surgery done. And I didn't tell anybody either, because I was so like self-conscious about this thing. That I just like, I told my professors, I was like, look, I'm not going to be there for finals week. And I had performances that I had to do. I just like skipped them. And, which is not a really good idea, but I did. And the surgery took place in a hospital in Barcelona. And so I show up there by myself. I decided to do it by myself because I didn't tell anybody. There was nobody there to come with me. my mom tried to come visit me in Spain, but like she's not very good with English. So I'm like, you're gonna get lost in Madrid, and I'm gonna be in a hospital bed, and nobody's gonna be able to come find you because like she can't read Spanish signs at an airport. So it's like, how would she navigate her way from Madrid to Barcelona? No way. So I'm just like, stay home, save money, I'll be fine. Like the doctors won't let me die, right? So that was my mentality. It was a really really bad decision because I woke up from the surgery and I'm like, the first thing I remember waking up I didn't feel any pain. Like my entire face was numb. So there was no pain involved, but my entire mouth was wired shut. And what ended up happening in the surgery was they broke the bottom and top part of my jaw in like 6 different pieces. And then they like removed like sections of bone out and then like and rotated my bottom jaw and like pushed it backward and took my top jaw and rotated it forward. And then they like screwed it all together with titanium plates and then they like sealed it shut. But then they put braces on and then like wired the braces shut because it was such a traumatizing surgery to the muscles around my jaw. But the muscles, like after the muscles were stuck in their position for so long, right? They were stuck in that underbite position that when they moved the bone, the muscles wanted to push them back to the previous position. And so all the wires and everything to close my jaw shut was meant to like basically reteach my muscles adapt to this new position of my jaw. So what it felt like I was straining against myself to put my mouth in that position, but it was the new natural position. So it felt really weird. It was like the muscles felt really tense and like stretched out, but that was like just the way my jaw was now. And all of a sudden it was weird because I woke up and I was like, wow, my teeth are touching. And it's like my top teeth, my front teeth are in front of my bottom teeth. And it was like, this is so weird. My molars are touching each other. And so the bite felt right. The muscles felt wrong. But I couldn't speak. And the kicker was that I couldn't breathe because my nose was all stuffy. Like, so when they like went in and they, like did all that stuff in this area, your nose just like bleeds like crazy just because of all the stuff that's happening there. So like my nose was just clogged up with dry blood the entire time. And my face was extraordinarily swollen. It was so bad. I looked like the Nutty Professor. Like my face was like, it was that bad. I'm not even exaggerating. I have pictures of it and I'm afraid to show them, but someday I will. It was bad, but my face was so swollen that my lips were like closed shut from the swelling and my nose was clogged and my like teeth were wired shut. I couldn't breathe at all. Like there was like no area in my face where there's no hole in my face for like breathing to come in and out of. And so the first thing that happened was I just started panicking. I was like, oh my God, I'm suffocating. And I started panicking and like I hit the button to call the nurse in. And she comes in and she's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Except this is all in Spanish. So she's saying it in Spanish and like, I can't understand what she's saying. And I'm like panicking. So then like I grab my phone and I write, I'm like typing in Google Translate. I was like, I can't breathe. And she's like, oh, it's normal. It's normal. And I was like, yeah, but I can't breathe.
But there's still no air in my lips.
There's no air. So like, I start bawling. Man, I just like started sobbing because I was freaking out. I was panicking. And when you start to cry, like your nose runs with snot. And so like that was like dislodging all of this like blood. So I basically started having a nosebleed from crying. And then I was like choking on it because there was nowhere else for it to go. So then like that made it worse. So eventually she was like, man, this kid. So she took an oxygen tube with like one of those plastic tubes and like stuck it in the corner of my mouth, like behind my teeth, so that I like had a steady stream of air. And it probably only lasted like 15 minutes. Like I was probably only panicking for 15 minutes, but it felt like I was like dying for hours. And it was like such a relief to just be able to breathe. It was crazy. And this is like from the very first night. And I'm like, this is going to be a really, really, really shitty recovery. So I was like, after that, I was put on a liquid diet for like 6 months. I couldn't chew on anything. I could barely move my mouth enough to speak real words. And everything was numb. So when I released, so when I finished the surgery, when I was through with that first part of the surgery, I was still recovering from the surgery. It took me like 2 or 3 years to gain full control over my jaw, which is like literally like 4 months ago. Like 3 years ago was 4 months ago from that surgery. So I still have a hard time like chewing on like peanuts. Like it's like the strength isn't all there. Um, but after that jaw surgery, um, I almost quit music, man. I almost like dropped out of school. Like I was so traumatized from everything that happened. And I didn't know why. I think the most frustrating part was I didn't know what the hell was going wrong, like what was going on with me, like because I was never like this. It just started happening, and I don't know if I like did something or I don't know. It's just like my body just decided to do this, and so I almost quit music. And I was like, "Look, you've dedicated so much time and life into this, and you literally have no idea what you would do if you stopped doing music." So I decided that I was going to continue to do music, but that I would finally, like, if I'm going to go back, I'm going to write music. Like, I'm not going to be a session guitar player. I'm not going to play for other people. Like, I'm not going to try to be a shredder or whatever. I just like, I want to write music. And so I went back to my final 2 semesters at school, um, focusing purely on writing music for myself, which I did. And I'm glad that I did, but the issue was that I was like months after jaw surgery and my singing was not good because I could barely move, I barely had control over my mouth. But it was something that I needed to do and I needed to get out of the way because the experience was very valuable. And it was just, like that initial terrifying, like first attempt is you just have to get it out of the way, right? It's like when you like go to the gym and you're like, oh, I really don't want to go to the gym. But like as soon as you get to the gym, like, all right, this is fine. I'm here. I'm just going to do it. It's
Yeah.
going to the gym is the hardest part about going to the gym. Like putting on the clothes and walking out that door. This was like the equivalent. It was like recording that first EP was the thing that I needed to get out of the way, to know that I could do it. And, just to be like, wow, I really can do this. So I recorded it and I had scheduled to release that first EP in July of 2017, which was like the week after I graduated from my master's program. And also the week that I would come back to the United States. So my plan was to drop this EP, come back to the United States, form a band and tour the EP, which is like, like a pretty standard plan. The issue was that about 3 days before I got back to the United States, it was more like a week. I started noticing visual problems. Like I started having really blurry vision and like blurry peripheral vision. And I was thinking, oh, it's some sort of eye infection or something. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be back in the United States very soon. And I have to get a new contact lens prescription. So I might as well go to my eye doctor and ask him about it. So I get back to I graduate, I come back to the United States and I get back like on a Saturday. My appointment's on a Monday morning. So like I've been back in the United States for less than 48 hours. My appointment's at 11 a.m. I show up to my eye doctor and I tell them what's going on. I say there's like issues with my peripheral vision, is really blurry on the edges of my vision. And so they do like this peripheral vision test or a field of vision test. And then they like check what's going on with my optics or whatever. And they tell me to wait. I was like, okay. So then they call me back into the office and I walk into the office and I see the doctor at his computer desk on Google Images. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. if you walk into a doctor's office and they have Google Images up, then it's probably kind of bad. And he's like, there's something behind your eyes that's physically affecting your vision. Like this isn't an infection. It's like there's something there that physically has pressure on your eyes. And so he's like, I think you need to go to the ER right now and get an MRI. And I'm like, you really think it's that serious? Is it like an infection of my optic nerves or something? He's like, just go to the ER. And me having been in Spain for the last like 2 years, I didn't have insurance yet in the US. So I go to the ER and the first thing I think of is, how the fuck am I going to pay for this visit? Which is like so messed up if you think about it. So I get there and I tell them that like the doctor, my eye doctor wants me to get an MRI like immediately, and them being the U.S. healthcare system, be like, okay, go sit down, and I'm like, okay, but he wants me to go like right now, and he's like, I know, but you got to sit down and wait, and I waited for like 8 hours for
Shit, dude.
someone to see me. So I'm literally waiting in the waiting room. It was like 10 p.m. when they finally saw me. And during this time, I applied for Obamacare, which was very helpful on my phone. And they finally see me. They finally get me into the room and they ask me like all these really weird questions. Like, have you ever lactated from your nipples? Have you ever like had, I was like, what? No. It's like, have you ever had like really, really bad joint issues? I was like, yeah. Okay. Have you ever like had swelling of the feet and hands? Like really weird things that had nothing to do with my eyes. And I was like, yes, but why are you like? We just have a theory. We're trying to figure a few things out. So then they're like, we're gonna give you an MRI, and we're gonna inject you with this thing called contrast. And basically, when you get an MRI, you've had an MRI before?
I haven't had to do it with the contrast, but I had family who had to do that, and
Yeah.
it's a whole thing.
Yeah. They have to like inject you with like this liquid that like dilates or colors your blood vessels so that the MRI can see it better or whatever. So they do that while I'm in the machine, and I just start breaking out in hives because this is my first time, and it turns out that I'm allergic to the contrast.
Shit,
So
man.
they like immediately pull me out. And they're like, "We had no idea you were allergic." I was like, "I didn't know either." And like my neck is getting all itchy and stuff, and so that sucked. But luckily, they did get the pictures that they needed, and then they saw it. It was two 4 centimeter tumors in like at the base of my brain. Like one was on my pituitary gland, which is like the hormone producing gland, and the other one was right behind my eyes. And that was the one that was causing vision problems. And they were like growing off of each other. It was crazy. But at first they didn't know what it was. They were like, we just see this mass here. It's a lesion. It doesn't belong there. We don't know what it does. We don't know why it's there. And we don't know what it's going to do to you. They're like, it could be spinal fluid that just needs to be drained. It could be like a benign mass, and it could be cancer. And dude, when they said cancer, I lost it. I just like completely, my mind left the universe. I was like, oh no, I'm dead. It's over. And it was like very surreal because I don't know. I had always joked like before about, my resolution with death, about like, if I die, then I die. And I can't do anything about it. It's going to happen fast probably. And I won't even be around afterward to like grieve it. So it's like, I'm fine with that. And then all of a sudden I'm put in this position where it's very likely, or it could be very likely, that I die the next day. And it changed my entire perception because I was like, it was like one of the scariest moments of my life. And then also like the fact that I had spent all my life practicing and studying music and I had never released any music. And it was just one of those like, holy shit, like what have you been doing this whole time type of moments, and yeah, I spent the entire night just like sulking in that. But then eventually we find out that it wasn't cancer, and it was a tumor on my pituitary gland, which was obviously, like I said, the gland that produces all the hormones in your body, which was basically throwing my entire body into chaos. So like my cortisol levels were through the roof. It was just like my stress hormone was always at an all-time high. I had like zero testosterone in my body. My growth hormone was like, it was like 4 times the amount of a prepubescent teen. Like it was like it was insane. It was like I was going through puberty 4 times over with the level of like growth hormones that I had, which was the thing that caused my jaw to grow out. It was what was causing a lot of joint pain, and it ended up giving me arthritis, et cetera, et cetera. And so it explained everything. It was the sole factor in all of like the health issues that I had experienced for the last like 6 or 7 years. And it was, honestly, it was so relieving to know what it was. It was like the most relieving thing because like there was a way to fix it essentially. So in that was discovered in July. I got the surgery for it in September, and um, the surgery was pretty successful, but there was still like a lot of damage done by the tumor that just can't be fixed. So like I'm on a lot of medication. Like I take like 4 medicines a day, and then I have to take one injection every 11 days and then another injection every 28 days. And it's just like forever. Like literally just from now until the day that I die, I'm just on this medicine forever. And I had a lot of trouble and a lot of difficulty dealing with that at first. Because it just like made me feel so like inhuman. But then like, I got over it, like, because like, as like, regardless of the fact that I had to take all this medication, and I'm like, like some of the medications, if I don't take on a daily basis, I could literally just pass out and die. Like it's stupid. It's so stupid. But it's like one of those things that it's like, well, if I'm going to die, I better make sure I fucking do something with my life before it happens, And so like after that moment, like I was just unreserved music forever. Like I will literally die doing this. Which is why I've been going so hard for the last 2.5 years doing it. And it took a really long time for me to like find the balance of hormones that I needed. It was a good 6 or 7 months before I actually felt normal. And when I say normal, as in like as I was 18 years old, like pre-tumor days. And that was weird too, because when I woke up from the surgery, I remember waking up like, I woke up and I remember the first thing that I saw, they were wheeling me down a hallway, and we passed by like the lobby area, and I saw this orange couch, and I saw it and I looked at it and I was like, that is the brightest orange I've ever seen in my whole life. And I didn't realize at the time, but the tumor was so big that it was affecting colors. And
like dulling everything.
Yeah, like everything was so dull. And I didn't notice because it was so gradual that like it was like, but then when I woke up from the tumor, it was like night and day. Because for me, it was like I just woke up. Like they gave me the anesthetic and it was like lights out, and then a second later I was awake. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing.
It's the craziest thing. So like I went to sleep seeing the world one way, and then I woke up and I saw it filter free, and it was just like mind blowing. And that was just like insane to me. Yeah, so that's my story. So that's my story. It's a really long story.
No, dude, that's incredible, and obviously very impressive that you were able to make your way through it one step at a time. And of course, I'm glad that you chose to stick with music, because I have a lot of similar feelings. Like I haven't gone through anything that extreme, but I mean, you certainly shouldn't feel bad about taking medicine. I take medicine on a daily basis for anxiety, and it's a similar thing of like, this is something where I battle with balance in life, but making sure that I'm putting music and doing what I want to do with the powers of me being a human in the real world. I have some things that I can do, so I better do them. So I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad and impressed and happy that you continued to make music, which you obviously have the skills for. And I didn't know you went to Berkeley and also had a master's like beyond that, which is impressive, because I come from like a very opposite thing where like I had some instruction on guitar in high school. Well, our singer went to Berkeley too, and he went for drums and arrangement, but he always wanted to be a frontman too. So we finally got to meet up with him and do that. But I come from like writing and having a hard time learning other people's stuff. So almost the opposite of how you started. I
envy that.
Well, and I sort of envy like you being like your toolkit. But the amazing thing about writing is that, like you said, if you just start doing it, you will discover how you write. There is no book for writing. That's
fair. That's a very good point.
Which is cool, because like, and that's why I think when I listened to your stuff, I was like, okay, this is a sound I haven't heard before. This dude has a very specific voice, and that's what sort of caught on. And I guess my first question about that, and once you did dive into creating your own music, you mentioned after the first jaw surgery, it was hard to sing. Did you already know how to sing before that, or were you purely guitar?
I I was never a trained vocalist. I sang in high school, like I did the choir and singers and stuff like that. And I don't think that I was a bad singer by any means at that point. Um, I have a really good ear, which I think is very important when it comes to singing. Um, so that's very helpful for me when it comes to singing because I can, even if I can't hit the note or even if I can't hit the note or if I'm off, I can hear that I'm off, which is, I think, sometimes very valuable. Um, so no, I wasn't a trained singer, and I was mostly a guitar player. And man, I practiced so much guitar. Man, I practiced a lot. Like there was a point before I went to Berkeley, and again, this is like the whole validation thing. When I actually before I went to Berkeley, I went to Temple University in Philly,
Hmm.
and I spent like 2 years there as like an undeclared major because I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. But all I did was practice guitar while I was there. And so eventually I was like, oh, well, I might as well audition for music school. Um, but before I auditioned, I was like, but I need to get good. So I was practicing like 6, 7 hours a day for like 2 years, like every single day, like 6, 7 hours. And like I got to the point where I was like shredding. And then I got into Berkeley and then like I realized that everybody shreds. And and I was just like, but I didn't let it like demotivate me because like if anything I just started practicing more. But then it got to the point where I realized like, why am I practicing so much? Like what do I want out of this? And it wasn't fulfilling anymore.
Yeah, and then I mean I know it's a cliche thing to say on the internet where people are like, "Oh, melody is always more important than speed on guitar and stuff." Although I still want to learn how to shred and do more stuff because
It's
I
fun.
love that.
Yeah.
But my favorite shred capable guitar players still do very melodic stuff. So even like to me, the best shredders and all around guitar players are people like Buckethead, Guthrie Govan. Um,
Buckethead. Good days.
yeah,
Good
and,
days.
and like because they can do it all, which like
Yeah.
people like you who can do it from a theory level, and I'm still kind of learning theory in bits and pieces. But I think that ties in, like it makes sense that you would be into like Polyphia because they have all the skills in the world, but a distinct flavor. And
Yeah.
then like since you've got the pop punk, do you know the band Capstan?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, yeah, that I feel like that's somewhere where you would fit in really well too, with just incredible musicality, but the catchiness, the relatableness.
True.
Although you've got that indie vibe too, where your voice has a little, maybe even a bit of that like Ben Gibbard
Yeah,
tonality.
I've heard some pretty weird, interesting comparisons in my voice, and like I don't know. This is just how I sound. Um, I'm not like I know like this new wave of pop punk is like like really aggressive fry vocally type of thing.
Yeah,
Like uh um Hot
I
Mulligan,
was about to
you
say
know what I
Hot
mean?
Mulligan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love their stuff, but I can't sing like that, and
yeah,
I wish
it's
that I
very
could, but I
specific.
can't. Um, but I still love pop punk, so like I just have to sing it the way that I can. So yeah, I've always actually been really self conscious that I can't do that. To be honest, like that was
Oh no,
actually
dude. Like that's like I again, we're almost inverse. Like I cannot sing. Like eventually I'll get there. I want to learn how to sing harmonies for us and stuff, but like I had like the timbre of my voice, like just singing, bad. So I envy like you having that very clean voice, but I can scream pretty well. So if you need
that's
scream,
awesome.
yeah. But it's just a matter of working with what you have and then developing what you don't have. So I was really curious, like you have, like we were saying, you have that specific blend of the indie, the obviously the musical skill, and then the emo and pop punk. Is that a is something I ask a lot of people, like is it a conscious mix or is it literally, and I think this is usually the answer for people, part to part, you just go with what feels right and then your influences just kind of naturally come through. So but some people are very analytical about it, like they'll write it out, so it could, I always want to know.
No, I'm probably more of an analytical person. Um, I'm kind of weird. So like when I write, maybe this isn't weird, but when I write music, because like when I went to Berkeley, I was a double major, right? So I was a guitar performance major, but then I doubled with music production, engineering, and stuff. So whenever I write songs, I write with a producer's mindset where I'll write out like I write all the parts in all of my songs, and I will write out the songs and the instrumentals, and I will leave spaces for certain things. Like I will write out a riff and a verse, and I was like, okay, the riff is going to be 4 bars long, and it's going to be in this register, and the vocals are going to be in this register. So I'll make sure that the guitars are this low when I write them. I'll make sure they're in like this like chordal range, and then like, oh, there's like a 4-bar phrase here, so like I know that the vocals that I hear in my head are going to sing something like this type of melody, and there's going to be an empty space here. So now I have to create a riff here, and I'll do all the instrumental tracks before I even write a single lyric. So like I tend to do like that, I guess like a top line over myself, where I'll just make a bunch of tracks, and I'll write them song structure from start to finish, and I'll just let them sit. I'll just let them simmer until like I'll listen to them over and over again until like I hear a melody that gets stuck in my head and I can't get rid of it. And if I can't get rid of it, then I'm like, okay, then this has to be the correct melody for the song. Which is like, I'm sure that's probably more common than I think it is.
What's fascinating is that like I like asking people that, because that's actually kind of similar to how I do it, except I rely on our singer Andrew for the actual melody. Like sometimes I'll pitch him lyrics, but mostly so I'll try and get just what feels natural for a fun flow. But yeah, like you said, just parts, one part at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But even within like my band, everyone has a different writing style. Like Sean, our other guitarist, he will go even to cymbal swells and production stuff before he's comfortable showing it to us. Whereas our rhythm section, our brother team, they're jam guys, because they grew up with a professional musician dad, so they are just, their instruments are part of their bodies. And then Andrew, who went to Berkeley, is like right in the middle of all of us. Awesome. So it always fascinates me how different people do it, because I don't think I'll ever be able to write literally like someone else. Like I don't think I could write like you or like our drummer or our bass player, but I can take techniques from people and be like, let me try that. And so that, I think, the way you think about it, that's just another way for that. So thank you for me to absorb.
No, of course.
Like just thinking about even the register, because I think this is something my bandmates and friends and I talk about a lot, and I'd be interested on your take on this. Like a big part of what makes a band sound good or something that's going to attract people is the arrangement of your song. If it makes it easy to listen to and it makes sense to our subconscious, that I think is an underrated, overlooked skill.
Yeah. No, it's like, it's a very, very crucial thing when it comes to like song production. And I try to write like that in my head. So that's the thing. I actually started writing a lot like that in the beginning. Like I started writing, making sure that like vocal heavy first, very like pop, like standard pop punk stuff with a little bit of indie pop, I guess, vibe. But I didn't go too crazy with any of the guitar stuff, even though like that's so much of who I am. And it got to the point where like I wasn't satisfied enough with some of the songs so like these new songs that I've written that I haven't released yet, but they're coming out soon. I kind of like open the gates a little bit more with just play the guitar, dude. And so there's a lot more guitar heavy stuff in these new songs that I'm really excited about. And I think that's just a part of like, you know, every artist's evolution in sound. And I still try to write with like that mindset of like, it still has to be listenable. Like they still have to be able to hear the song and connect with the song. But really, I think the most important thing when it comes to music, no matter what type of music or genre is, besides arrangement, is just like the emotion that you get, you know? And it's like, it's one of the things, like there's sometimes like I'll write a song and before I even like, it's rare. I only have like 1 or 2 songs that are like this, but like it's one of those things where it's like a good technique or practice that I like to do is if I write a song and if I can translate that entire song into an acoustic version, just solo acoustic and solo vocals, and I still achieve that same emotional hit that I got from the full band version, if it still hits that emotional chord, the exact same or pretty close to the same feeling that I got before, then I'm like, this is a good song.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know what I mean? It's like one of those, like, there's a handful of really good songs that are like, no matter what medium, what instrument, or what arrangement you have, you play that song on any instrument, anybody that sings it, it just, everybody feels the same feeling from that song, you know? And I think that's like a really important and sometimes overlooked practicing technique when it comes to writing music. It's just, can you play it on the acoustic guitar or on the piano with just you and your voice and your instrument, and can you achieve the same feeling or the same emotion?
Agreed. Yeah. And the only reason, like the only quote unquote disagreement I would have is like, just to, like, there's nothing wrong with having a song that is heavily arranged or
Oh yeah,
orchestrated,
for sure.
especially if that was your intent. But yeah, the acoustic thing, I think you're totally right, because it's about, all art is about conveying emotion, and then everything else is just your tool for doing that the way you want to do it. And I thank God we have Andrew who can do that acoustic thing. Like,
That's
we have
awesome.
an upcoming song that's like pretty heavy and a little
Hmm.
bit like new metal, like System of a
Nice.
Down influenced. But he recently, just for practice and stuff, before he's getting ready to track the vocals, he went on Instagram and he was just playing like an acoustic, like ambient version. I was like, dude, how did you do that? Like, we haven't
Yeah.
even talked about doing that yet. And he just was able to play like the simplest version of it. And
Hmm.
what was interesting, and I think something that you might find when you do that same sort of exercise of making it acoustic, is it was the same emotion, or at least the same idea, but it was a different feeling, like a different color, almost if you were
Yeah,
thinking of it
yeah,
in
yeah.
film sense, like it would be a different filter or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, that makes total sense. And that's
With
fine. And that happens all the time. Like, you can do that with any song and change the tempo or change the key or even make it minor. And it will change the emotion. Um, so yeah, I need to retcon that a little bit. And as long as it invites or evokes a similar or equally strong emotion, it doesn't have to be the same emotion, but if
Yeah,
it still strikes a chord in the same way, then you got a good song.
exactly. And I wasn't trying to like contradict you or
Oh, no,
anything. I
no, no.
just thought that's something I had just seen, and it was an interesting thing. And on the topic of invoking emotion with the music, I was really enjoying your music videos as well, and was wondering what the process, like conceptualizing, organizing, filming, how you did that, because it's a, like, as someone who's done that and produced, or in some sense a couple of our videos, like, it's fucking hard, man. Like, there's
Dude,
a
it's
lot
so
of things to
hard.
juggle.
It's so okay. I don't have a lot of rules, right? When it comes to video, I mean, like, I'm not naive when it comes to producing videos, but one, I watch a lot of movies and I watch a lot of films. I mean, and when I watch, like, I analyze, and I just can't not. Just, I think it's just the way my mind works. But like, I will watch movies, and part of it is because I have spent time working and creating like film commercials. Like, I've done commercials, so I know how to work a camera to a decent amount, and I know how to conceptualize frames and shots in my head. So when I honestly don't know how ideas come to me, but ideas come to me somehow. I'm usually inspired by something, and I'll be on TikTok or I'll be on YouTube or Instagram, and I'll see something, and I was like, "Ooh, this is really cool. What if I did it with this twist?" You know, and then like it just grows from there. It's kind of like how anything is created. Um, but for me, it's like when I envision a video, like, I will sit there and I'll go start to finish. Like, I will go word by word, lyric by lyric, or scene by scene, and I will visualize every single part of the music video. Um, and usually it's because I'll have a very strong theme in my head. Like for You're Not Insane, um, that one was a lot easier because the content of the song was like, the idea of You're Not Insane as a song is like, everybody is in the social media age, everybody is portraying themselves as like their best self, right? Here's the unfiltered, or here's the filtered version of my life. Like with the filter, like this is the seventh photo that I took in this angle with this lighting, but this is like me. but it's not. It's like, this is your seventh try at being you. And I kind of took that and added the twist of like my health issues, because I'm one of the lucky ones that with the diseases that I have, I'm one of the lucky ones because I got jaw surgery. I could have a way worse jawline. After the after the brain surgery, I had lost like 40 pounds of weight. So like, I look like a normal person now, whereas very many people who went through that do not look like a normal person. And I always thought it was funny because like through all the pain and suffering, the things that people would say to me was like, "Oh, you look good though." It was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but you look good though. Like you look really healthy though." And I was like, "Why?" Because I dropped 40 pounds in 2 weeks. It's like, that's not a healthy amount of time to lose weight. Like that was actually really scary. I was bedridden for like 4 weeks straight. I didn't lose weight because I was exercising or dieting. I lost weight because I wasn't eating for a month. And it was just like things like that. And it was just like, I thought it was just so funny to me. It was just like, I look healthy, so people assume that I'm healthy when I'm very much not, because I'm on 5 medications and 2 injections every month. And so it's just like, I just thought it was crazy that like, that we take so much, we put so much weight on the way people look and the way people portray themselves. And I'm guilty of it myself too. Like everybody wants to look good, especially in such a visually driven industry, even though it's music. And so I wanted to like make fun of that in a way. And that's kind of what the song is about. It's really satirical. And I thought it would be funny if like I was in this music video where like I was in this alternate reality where I'm trying so hard to be normal and everybody else is really fucked up. And they're like looking at me like, why are you trying so hard to be normal? And so I wanted everybody in hospital gowns, and like they all had like ailments, and they were like, they had like headbands and stuff, but like they were loving it. Like they were accessorizing with these like headbands, like medical gauze is like, you know what I mean? They were like coloring their eyes because of the discoloration of their skin and stuff like that, but they were using it as an accessory. And me, like I'm walking around in jeans and like a denim shirt, and I'm just like, oh, I'm just a cool dude and I look normal, but I walk around and everybody's staring at me like I'm crazy because I'm like wearing normal clothes and everybody else is in a hospital gown. And so they were just trying to make fun of the fact that like I was pretending to be something that I wasn't. And so the storyline was that, I wake up in this different reality, and I'm fooling myself and pretending to be something that I'm not. And then eventually like everyone's pestering me to like, dude, like you need to stop. Like you're fine. Like just let it go. You're fine. You're fine. And then at the end of the song, when I finally accept that like I'm just as fucked up as everybody else, then like I'm finally participating with everybody. Like I'm, in the full hospital gown, et cetera, et cetera. And so like coming up with that video I came up with all of that storyline and the imagery. I came up with all of that in one night. And then what I did is I actually storyboarded. Like I actually sat there and I like have like 5 sheets of blank paper and I drew the frames that I saw in my head. And they're very, very bad. They're so bad, but they were enough to convey like I want like a full head-on shot, close up of the face, this angle, and like I want there to be like a reverse of the camera with the other person like screaming at me. And like I want there to be a scene where I'm in the park and somebody's walking by on a bike and they're just like staring at me and there's a close-up of their face as I walk by. They're like, what the hell? You know what I mean? And so like I had all these images in my head and I just drew them out as I saw them. And it never like completely works out the way that I think, but I got like 70% of the shots that I drew down, which was really nice. And that's just kind of how I do all my music videos. I will say one of the things that I hate, but am guilty of doing at least once, is I'm not a fan of the band in a white cycle around the videos. I hate them so much. They're so boring. They're so boring and generic. And I was just like, I don't want to do it. But I did it on my last video because like it was like one of those rite of passages. Like everyone's got to have one. So I did that, but I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. But like, I'm going to have like really cool contemporary dancers dance around us while we do it. And so we did that for Undefined. And we had like I had this dancer who was on Hamilton, like choreographed that music video, and she was phenomenal. Her name's Megan. Um, and yeah, so I try very hard not to like do like, because the thing is like, it's art, you know, and it's your vision, and it's like I don't want to be lazy, and I always have a vision for all of my songs and all my music videos, and I'm just like I've never once like envisioned myself in a white room, and I don't know very many people who have, but it's sort of become the default thing to do just because everyone else has done it and other bands have done it, and I'm just like, you know, I'll do it once, but I think we can do better, and I think everybody can do better. And so like that's just one of my like personal pet peeves, and I'm not saying that it's right or it's wrong. It's just like it's like my personal taste.
Yeah, I totally get that. Although I definitely think there's something to be said for giving new fans a visualization of you as a band playing your instruments, and
Yeah,
at least someone who a previously aspiring and now current slash still aspiring musician. I
always.
always liked being able to see how they played, and if especially for more technical bands, like it's like give me close ups of the fretboard and stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
But I do love, obviously, being able to visualize the actual theme of the song is the real goal. And although in a more to the previous style that I was saying about being able to see and play, like my favorite video and my favorite song was the one where you have just that's in the apartment, I think, in the kitchen. Was that a quarantine video?
Yeah, it was just like a quarantine thing that I did because we had no resources at the time. And this was like in the very beginning of quarantine. So like everything was shut down. And I recorded the next music video, Undefined. I did that during COVID, but like things had opened up by then. So like, yeah, when we did Paralyzed, I was like, I'm just gonna film this in the kitchen, and it was crazy because it was like the best lighting I ever got in that
I was gonna
apartment.
say it's framed well. It looks really good. So it seemed like it was all planned.
No, and I was never able to achieve that same lighting, and I don't know what I did. I don't know what happened, but I tried to repeat that lighting for like cover videos, and I just could never get the same effect. And I was like, what the hell did I do? So I was really sad, but I was really happy that we were able to do that.
Yeah, and it just felt right for the time, and just that's what so many of us were doing was like playing music, trying to make content, and trying to feed ourselves
Yeah.
basically.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was it, relatable. But then with this, I liked the song because it feels like the most instrumentally intense song of yours thus far too, which I'm a person who, like, when I like something, I'm like, give me more of it. So to me, I was like, I liked these songs up until now, and now this is my favorite because it's the most. But yeah, so that was my favorite one. So I was just curious if that was equally as planned as the other, or if it was truly like a quarantine idea.
Nope, it was pretty spontaneous. But I will say that if you did like Paralyzed, then I think you might like these new songs a lot.
Okay.
I'll share them with you after this.
Okay.
I'm not gonna release them yet, but they were produced by Chris Crummett, who produced a lot of Dance Gavin Dance, Sleeping
Wow.
with Sirens, and Crown the Empire. So, man,
So really hybrid bands too. So
yeah,
that fits
yeah.
in perfectly.
So I think it was a really good relationship between Chris and I when I went to the studio, and I had always self-produced before by then. So everything like on my last album and my EP was all self-produced. Like I recorded and mixed it and everything myself. But last year I got so burnt out from like I was working full time, and I still do. And I was producing bands on the side, and I was going to school part time. I got a second master's degree, which was dumb. Um, I got a master's in music technology at NYU. Um, it's just a validation disease. Um, but I was doing that part time, and I was tutoring and I was teaching part time. So I was doing like so many different things, and I was trying to produce an album for myself at the same time. And then when it got towards the end of it, I was just like, just get these damn songs out. Like I was like so jaded with the music that I compromised on the quality, and I didn't do as much promotion as I should have. I think they turned out fine. They could have been better. But after that, I was like, I'm never self-producing ever again. And I finished school, so I'm done with school for basically forever. And I stopped taking on clients as producing them. And so now I'm just purely focusing on my music. And it's still a lot of work. It's like,
Yeah.
I just replaced all of that work with more work. And it's like, I feel like I didn't free up any of my own time. I just replaced one thing with another, which is what I wanted, but it's like, it's still really intense.
Yeah, that's sort of that balance thing we were talking about at the beginning. Like, I think until you reach a certain level of success, it's about like doing as much as you can on like, but not being detrimental to your mental health or physical health.
Yeah.
And then I guess the dream, and this could be a terrible attitude to have, but it's just like there is this default feeling of, if I can go far enough, eventually I'll have help because people will be paying me for this. Like,
Right.
and it's like, is that the way to go about it? Like, sure, it's not untrue, but it's like, well, no, I mean, that's really all there is to it. In the capitalist economy we've created, that's the
Yeah.
only way to do it, is be good enough that eventually you can delegate the stuff that is not your direct responsibility. And I don't want to think of it that way, because I want to have a real team.
Yeah.
But
I'm the same way.
but that's also the silver lining is, if you can figure out, even if it's not a money thing, if you can figure out how to collaborate with people like visual artists and things, that's ideal. But that's just another skill of organization. And that's what's so impressive about you to me, is that like, I'm so trying to figure out how to juggle everything, because we're kind of self-producing this record that we're working on now, but we are we're doing mixing someone else. So
Yeah.
otherwise it would never be finished.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it's like, how
So
do you start figuring out like album artwork, blah, all this stuff?
it's okay. So I will say I do have a lot of help. Like I do a lot of stuff on my own, but I still have a lot of help. Like my bass player, Tyler, I mean, he plays bass for me, but he also helps with like so many things that like I don't give, like he'll book venues for me, or he'll book like venues um for filming the music video. My video director is very involved with my music videos. Like I'll give him the concept, and we'll spend hours spitballing and like figuring things out. But I'll tell him the shot that I want, but he'll be the one to figure out, okay, I need this type of lens, I need this type of, you know what I mean? Which is really good. And he knows, I think part of it is like, he's really good with, figuring out how to do things. Like even if he doesn't know, he's really good at figuring it out. And the other thing is that I'm really good at articulating what I want, which I think is very important for most artists. Is one is having the strong vision, and then also being able to describe it so that other people can understand it, which is like underrated. But I do have a lot of help. And there's one thing that when you said earlier about like getting to the point where you get paid for this and like you get a team, I think that's everybody's goal. Like everybody's silver lining is like, you're going to keep chugging and keep chugging until you get to the point where it's like people will start to do things for you because they care. But what I'm starting to learn from, I want to say I'm leveling up the people that I'm spending time with. After you do it for a certain amount of time, after you do it for so long, and you essentially start to prove yourself as, I don't want to say prove yourself as an artist, but prove yourself as a hard worker with discipline and ethic and stuff, you start to like elevate the company that is around you. So like you start to you start to resonate with people that are, they have their foot in a certain section of the industry. And you start to realize that like the grind never stops. Like no matter what level of artistry you're at, like, yes, there will be people that will come in and do things for you. And there is a level to that, but at the end of the day, like you're still going to be putting in 100. You're going to be working just as hard, if not even harder, when you get to that certain point, because you've proven yourself to be a person that works a certain amount. And if you finally make it to a point and you start to work less than that, then people are going to be like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah,
Like
then you're gonna fall off
yeah,
fast.
yeah, and they're gonna be like, "That's like this is not what we signed you up for. Like you don't get to relax now because you're just getting started." And that's what I'm starting to realize is like when people start to make it, when they get record deals and stuff, it's like that's when their career starts. And
Yeah,
all of this stuff is just the training, I guess. Um, though the one thing that you just said is making money off of it because the one biggest factor is that we have day jobs. At least I have a day job. I'm sure you do too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's about 40 hours a week that you can delegate to
At
music stuff.
least, yeah.
And that is a huge game changer. I hope. I don't know yet.
Right. But no, I totally agree. And then yeah, you can't stop working, but yeah, the beauty of that dream is then you get to, like you just said, you dedicate all those hours to what you actually
Mhm.
want it to, which ideally leads to even better art and
Yeah.
or more satisfying art if we're trying not to be objective about art.
Right.
But speaking of subjectivity and art, I always want to give people enough time to answer this last question that I give
Okay.
everyone. Can you give us 5 shout outs or recommendations of musicians, bands, or artists that we haven't mentioned yet who you think deserve more attention at any level?
Um, Nate Flood is killing it right now. And I love, dude, I love his um, mixture of pop punk and trap. I have I have taken inspiration from some of his songs lately, so he's killing it. Um, there's a band here that I played with a year or two ago named Percier in New York, and they opened up for Bayside like last year when they were still touring, and they're really good. Like when I played with them for a show on like the first song they played, I was like, wow, these guys are good. Like they're a tight band, so they were really good. Um, I love Chan. I know everybody knows Chan, but I love Chan, and I can't help but shout them out. Um, I have been listening to a lot of Nothing Nowhere recently. Man, the things that Joe does are they're just so musical in the most like contemporary way. How's that? 4? Okay, and then and I have to just give a shout out to Steve Vai. Steve Vai. The thing about Steve Vai is that he, to me now, is less of a guitar player and more of like a mental inspiration. Um, and I have a short little story. I'm so sorry.
No, please.
But when I was 18 years old and I was like a fresh, like, oh, I want to go to school for music. And like, I like had made the decision that I wanted to be a musician. I went to one of his master classes in Pennsylvania, and the guy played one song the entire time. He played the guitar for like 10 minutes for like an hour and a half master class. And you know what he spent the entire rest of the hour and 20 minutes? He was just preaching his mindset. And I was like, what the hell did I just pay for? I was so upset, you know? But then like what I realized, like as I kept getting older and older, was like one of the things he said was, you don't want to learn guitar from me. You don't want to play like me. He's like, you can learn scales from anyone. You can learn theory from anyone. You can practice on your own. I'm not going to be the person to make you practice, but what I will tell you is how to think. And I thought it was such spiritual mumbo jumbo at the time because I was a kid. And he was just like, he's like, you get what you put out into the universe. Like the law of attraction of thought, you know, is kind of like, if you think about something a certain way, you're going to attract more thoughts that are very similar, you know? So if you think negative thoughts, then you're going to continue to think more negative thoughts or things that are more negative, and it'll lead to a negative mood and a manifestation of negative things. But it obviously on the opposite end, if you think of positive things, if you envision yourself doing something that is very positive, and you continue to do that, you'll keep thinking more positive things. And I thought it was so like, oh, well, duh, you know, like I thought it was so like, but it's so underrated because like, that's all I've been doing for the last like 6 or 7 years is envisioning myself at a certain point in my life and reaching that point. And then I was like, holy shit, I can't believe I did that. And then continuing to think further ahead of like these positive thoughts or positive visions of myself in certain places. And I'm like, if I keep doing this, like, who knows what's going to happen? You know what I mean? So it's like really lame and cheesy, but it's like one of the things that resonated with me and has stuck with me more than almost any other lesson that I've ever learned.
Dude, no, that's awesome. And I agree. Like, and the cool thing is, like, what Steve Vai said is, it makes total sense to me, because it's the reason that I ask people these kind of nitty gritty, maybe almost too deep questions about their songwriting and stuff, is because, yeah, we don't want to play exactly like each other, like we were saying before. But if you can get at least a little bit of how someone thinks and how they envision, that's what you can take something from
Yeah.
and apply to
Yes.
yourself. So
Absolutely.
and I think you've done that for me in spades today. So thank you
Dude.
so much for being a great storyteller and being able to be open with us about all that, because I feel like I learned a lot.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Dude, it was awesome. And thank you to Dustin from Two Eyes Open for introducing me to you. Everybody definitely check the links in the description down below for more from Darro. And you said you got new songs coming. Any general vicinity of time you expect to release those, or not?
Early May. So
early May.
in about a month and some change.
Okay, everyone, go make sure you follow so that you can see those songs the minute they come out. And thanks for listening, everybody.